Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patty LuPone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to a special Broadway Podcast Network Broadway Nation live stream event here celebrating the release of David Armstrong's new book, Broadway Nation, How Immigrant, Jewish, Queer, and Black Artist Invented the Broadway Musical. This is a book that has so much information that I can't wait to dive into. And so I'm Alan Seals. I'm co-founder of Broadway Podcast Network and host of the Theater Podcast with Alan Seals. And I have another podcast called Was It Chance and a Jim Carrey podcast called Carried Away. Look it all up. It's out there. And over the next 90 minutes or so, you're going to have the chance to join me in a creative conversation with David Armstrong as we go inside the creation of this book. This is his first book, by the way. This is an amazing feat, especially for book number one. Well, Lowe's Quiet. It's an amazing feat, full stop. And it's book number one. Even more impressive. Okay, so you're going to have the opportunity to ask David whatever questions you may have about the challenges and rewards of putting a book like this together. You're going to have a chance to participate in our Broadway Nation Trivia Contest, and you can win a hardcover copy of the book for yourself, which is actually a $100 value. That is, it's a hefty book. It should be a lot of fun. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the man of the hour himself, David Armstrong. Hey, David.
Hello, everybody. Hello. This is so exciting. I can't tell you, if anybody saw me on the unboxing video, you saw how excited I am about this book. And it is just amazing to have it in my hand and to have already, I know people have all received it in the mail, which I was so happy about. So I've heard from a couple of people, even someone has actually read it already, which is, I don't know how they got through it all that quickly, but
that's a lot of reading real fast.
That's a lot of fast reading. Exactly. Maybe they're one of those speed readers. It's a thrilling day. And, after 2 years of working on this book, to finally have it out there is so exciting. And of course, I need to thank Alan and the entire staff at BPN for making this possible and helping to spread the word today and sort of celebrate this pent up 2 years of work that now gets to be out there and people get to finally see what I've been doing for all this time. And of course, I have to thank my publisher, Matthew and Drama. I know that's a name that a lot of people will know. If you have any theater books in your house, if you have plays, they publish a lot of plays. It's sort of a storied name. So I was thrilled to have them invite me to write this book. And they're an imprint of Bloomsbury Publishing, which will be important to remember when things come up in a couple minutes. But before we get to details, get down into the details of how the book came about, let me just give a quick overview of the book for anybody who doesn't know what we're thinking about yet. Broadway Nation, How Immigrant, Jewish, Queer, and Black Artist Invented the Broadway Musical is a 431-page comprehensive history of the Broadway musical from the beginning to practically up to this moment. But with a special emphasis on the marginalized individuals and groups that were so crucial to its creation, including a significant number of women who didn't make it into the subtitle because women are already in all those groups that are mentioned in the subtitle. But I just want to emphasize that they're part of this as well. And with all of these groups, immigrants, Jews, Blacks, queers, women, these are people who are, we may know their names, or a lot of them you won't know their names, but they're often not acknowledged or highlighted in histories of the Broadway musical to the extent that I've endeavored to do it in this particular book. And of course, this approach will be familiar to anybody who's familiar with my podcast, because that's been the approach that I've taken with the podcast as well. But of course, in the book, I've had the opportunity to delve into much more detail than I can do on a book. If you're considering purchasing the book, if you go today to the Bloomsbury website, don't go to Amazon today, go to bloomsbury.com, and you'll see 30% off either the paperback, which ordinarily sells for $34.95, or the hardback, which sells for $100. Today at bloomsbury.com, you can get 30% off, which is a pretty good deal. I was very happy. It's also very happy the way the publishers have priced the book, putting out both the hardcover and the softcover at the same time. So, Alan, I think it's time. I'm usually the one who asks people questions, but today you're going to turn the tables on me, and I'll be the victim, as we used to say.
The victim. Oh man.
That's an old theater story. I don't know if some people might know what I'm talking about. I won't go into it now, but I'll explain the victim some other time.
Well, start me out at the beginning, because I don't even think I know the story of why you even created the podcast in the first place. Because the podcast, of course, led to the book, which we're going to talk about. But why start the podcast?
Because after I left the Fifth Avenue Theater after 18 years as being the producing artistic director of the Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle, I was asked to create a course for the University of Washington School of Drama. And I came up with this idea then of history of the Broadway music, this particular focus. So I started teaching there in 2018. And of course, after 2 rounds of teaching, we had the pandemic, or it was looming, and I was going to go back to teaching months after the start of the pandemic, and I had already had this idea that that making a podcast, sort of doing more, general audience friendly versions of the lectures I was using in my class, would make a great podcast. And then what reinforced that is now I had to teach, remotely. So I started making the podcast so I could actually use them, put them out for the public, but also use them to help remotely, since couldn't be in person for that, next almost 2 years that happened. So that's where the podcast came from. And then I was thrilled that Methuen and Drama, Dom O'Hanlon, who we'll hear from a little later, approached me about, he knew what the podcast was. I had interviewed a number of authors of books that they had published on my podcast, and they reached out to me and said, would you be interested? They knew about the course I was teaching, and they thought, would they think this can be adopted as a textbook? And so that's why they came to me to see if I was interested in creating this book. I had never written a book before, but I perhaps naively said yes. I don't recommend anybody writes a 400-page book the first time they write a book, but it's what they wanted. I give the people what they want. You're muted, Alan.
Oh, my fault. Sorry, my kids in the background are making noise, so excuse the little ones. It's 7:00 here on the East Coast. Okay, so you've got this podcast going, you've got this curriculum going, and so Dom reaches out. Dom's an editor, reaches out and says, "Make it a book." And my first thought would be like, how can I fit all this into one book? It's a possible task. So, like, along with, I guess, figuring out what to cover, what sort of challenges did you have putting all of this together?
That certainly was one of the challenges. It's a big subject. It's the entire history of the Broadway musical, 125 plus years, and it needs to be comprehensive. You want a book like this to give you the full story, and it's got added material to it than most other books have. So that was tricky, and Dom was really helpful with that, especially in the structuring of the book. And probably the biggest challenge for me is, for the lectures that I'd done or for the podcast, I didn't have to cite anything. I didn't have to document where anything came from. So now, even though I was using some of those lectures sort of as source material, the beginning of these chapters would be, I'd find a quote and go, where the hell did I get that quote from? I have no idea. And then I have to backtrack and figure out where this information came from, which is the ass backwards way of writing a book.
How much of this was there like Mandela effect kind of stuff in there, that like people have been misquoting things and it just become fact? I'll put in air quotes, fact.
There's absolutely a lot of things. And one of the great stories of that is there's a story about Anything Goes, and about the original production of Anything Goes. And they rewrote the script because there was a shipwreck off the coast of New Jersey, where thousands of people watched the ship go down and hundreds of people die. And they claimed that that's why the story is that that's why they had to rewrite Anything Goes when it was about to go into rehearsal, because originally the story had a wreck in it.
Oh, no.
Turns out to be, that's in dozens of books. That's in all kinds of books. Completely not true. and which I didn't know. I believed it was true also until I started doing this research and found other people who had documented that this was not the case. But the general story that's out there is sort of this received wisdom about it is not what really happened. The show just wasn't good enough, and they had to fire the book writers and get new ones in, even though they were famous book writers on all sides.
That doesn't make quite as good of a story as what
Well,
made it into lore.
exactly. And it's probably that the original producer of that show made up that story in order to let everybody off the hook.
Right. Yeah, let's
The shipwreck happened. I mean, it's the Castle Morro or something is the name of the boat that went down, like a ferry, which was a big disaster in the 1920s, but it didn't really affect goes.
Let me actually back up a little. I was going to say a little bit more, but I think it's going to be a lot more because little David, what got you into the arts? What made you fall in love with theater, performing Broadway?
I was one of those weird kids that knew what I wanted to do from 4 years old, if not before. I fell in love with theater, with show business, with musicals, especially mostly from television. I grew up in Cincinnati, and so I fell in love with Broadway through movies about Broadway that were on TV to begin with. But there's a famous story, I've told it on my podcast before, that when I was 5 years old, I think it's hard to track this exactly with when this movie came out and how old I was and what really happened. But my mother took myself and her friend and their to the movies to see Dumbo, but they went to the wrong theater and we saw Gypsy instead.
Okay.
And I insisted on having the soundtrack album, and of course for it, it's a movie about kids in show business.
Wow.
Yeah. You don't. I'm sure the last half hour of it was of little interest to me, but everything up to that was fascinating, and so I feel like I knew what quality was from the very beginning.
That's crazy.
Totally.
I love this. Kelly just put in the comments. Let's see. Just ordered my copy for next year's musical theater history course at LIU. CW can't wait to read it. So, by the way, yes, we are live. Please drop your comments into the comments section wherever you're watching now, because later on, soon, we're going to have David answer some of your questions. So go ahead, start thinking of what you want to ask David, either about the book or about Broadway in general. But yeah, drop it in the comments because that's how it works. So back to the book. I like this picture of Lin in the Heights down here.
Yep.
Classic. How did you decide how to structure this? Because I feel like there's many different ways you could have gone about it, like genre shifting or decades or even stylistically. But like, what were your options and what did you end up going with to present this information?
Well, one of the main things I'm interested in is the way I view the musical theater as this continuum, that it starts at the 1890s, basically. You could back further than that. For my purposes, the Broadway musical starts around the turn of the century, right about 1900. And from that point right up to today, every show and every writer leads to the next one. And so you have to, from my point of view, you have to sort of tell it chronologically, although not entirely chronologically, but you want to be able to go back and forth to follow the thread and follow how each generation reacted to the generation before and to the creators who came before them, sometimes emulating what they were done, sometimes reacting against what was done. But I find that to be a really fascinating story. And it's also a story of, I think one of the outstanding things about the Broadway musical is that it is handed down from person to person like a medieval craft. It is literally one person teaches the next person, and who then passes it on to the next generation in a way that I think very few things have happened that way.
Were you able to document that, or is that just what you're seeing? How did you document that?
Well, there's a lot of ways to document, but in the middle of the book, there's sort of what I call the intermission section. So the let me get us there. So the book is structured into acts, basically, which is a little cheesy, but it seemed to be the right thing to do for this kind of a book. So first of all, there's an introduction, and then there's a sort of overture, which talks about what is a musical, and also looks at the precursors of the musical before Broadway. What was there? What led? There was musical theater since the beginning of time, but what led to the Broadway musical, and what were the things that came before it? So we talk about that vaudeville and operetta and tin pan act, all the different precursors. Then Act One, I call the Genesis period, which is when the musical is forming, is discovering itself, is finding itself. And it's interesting that with musical theater scholars, there are very few agreed upon names for the eras or timelines for whatever the eras of musical theater are. So if you're teaching, you basically have to make something up because I needed something to talk about. So for me, the Genesis period begins in the 1890s, 1900 basically, and ends at near the end of World War II.
And the Genesis period, does that include vaudeville, or is that coming out of vaudeville?
It's coming out of vaudeville. Vaudeville is
Okay.
one of the precursors. Yeah. I mean, vaudeville is happening simultaneously with much of that. It's still a big, still happening. It hasn't died yet, so it's happening sort of concurrently with what's happening on Broadway at the time. Then people talk about the golden age of Broadway a lot, and many people will sort of say, well, think about starts in the 1920s and goes into the 1960s. But to me, that's, first of all, way too much time to identify.
40 years is too much.
Yeah. And second of all, if you're just talking about the great songs from Broadway, that might make sense. But if you're talking about the shows change substantially in the middle of that period. So I've invented something I call the Silver Age of Broadway, which is really basically the 1920s and the 1930s. So it starts with Irene, really, which opens in 1919, and then takes us through to the opening night of Oklahoma, which then kicks off the golden age of Broadway. And then, so I'm always looking for, when does form change? When do things shift substantially to be something new? So then, for me, the golden age of Broadway ends on the opening night of Hair, which then kicks off what I modern era of Broadway, which we're still in, which continues to today.
The Hair kicked us into modern.
Hair kicked us into modern, and I divide that section into two, basically the early modern era and then the 21st century, which takes us up to today. So those are the book follows that progression basically chronologically. But then, to get back to your question a minute ago, in the middle of that, I do what I call an intermission, where I trace one of these legacy changes, what I call them. And there's so many, you could pick so many different artists and so many different legacy chains to follow. This one I pick, and I don't want to give away one of our trivia questions that we have coming up later, but follows four artists, ending with Lin-Manuel Miranda, who we can basically, between these four artists, you can trace the entire history of the Broadway musical.
What?
And they directly teach the next person. One artist teaches the next person, who teaches the next person, who teaches the next person. And that's documented and so clear.
Who taught Lin?
Okay, I'll just give, so Sondheim is one of the mentors of Lin.
Yeah.
And Oscar Hammerstein, very famously, is direct mentor of Stephen Sondheim. And I guess we'll tee this up now. When we get to our trivia question, one of us is going to be, who was the mentor in the first part of that legacy chain? Who mentored Oscar Hammerstein II?
Ooh.
So somebody's probably already got it. Don't put it in the chat yet.
Don't put it in the chat yet. Yeah. They're out there doing this right now.
Exactly.
No, there's so much history in all of this, and I mean, literally, like how immigrant, Jewish, queer, and Black artists invented the Broadway musical. Like how much of these groups of people, and they're minorities in the world of white America, to be honest, right? Like, how much of their story it publicly has been erased, and like, was it hard for you to like start digging in and pulling out, giving credit where credit is due, or is it all there and just nobody talks about it?
A little of both. I wouldn't say erased. I just ignored and overlooked. And somewhat understandably, because we regretfully, but understandably, because we tend to focus on the things that have stuck around for a long time. And unfortunately, many of these artists did not have a legacy, even though they did important shows and had a tremendous effect on the shows of their era. They didn't have the staying power that other people had, which is the people which we mostly know about. And I can give some examples of that.
Yeah.
I'll just sort of do categories. In terms of women, there's some amazing people who had tremendous careers that and I'll admit that as I went originally when I was putting the course together for the UW, they were names I might have known, but I didn't really know much about them or have any real sense of the impact that they had on the Broadway musical. So for a couple examples, Dorothy Donnelly is probably not a name that people are very familiar with. This goes back to the very beginning of the Broadway musical. We're back in the Genesis period and moving into the Silver Age. She went from one to the other. She wrote the book and lyrics for 8 Broadway musicals and operettas and directed many of them. So this is in the 1910s and the. So just right there, you were introducing something that most people don't think was happening, and she's not the only one. There's 4 or 5 women in that category from that period who were really, and Dorothy Donnelly, one of the shows, and she had, but The Student Prince was a show that she wrote the music and the lyrics for, or the book and the lyrics for, rather. And was a giant hit. Well, that'll be another trivia question coming up later. We'll talk about The Student Prince. Another person I'll talk about who's a Black woman who was tremendous impact in her day is named Ada Overton Walker. She's one of my favorite characters in the book. And she was known. This is now this series of musicals that most people don't know about that happened in between 1900 and 1910. So again, at the very beginning of the Broadway musical, there's a series of Black musicals written by a whole host of Black theater artists. And Ada Overton Walker was the wife of George Walker of Williams and Walker, and we kind of know the name Williams and Walker. Ada was as famous they were, and was really the star first of their vaudeville act and then of the series of shows that they produced on Broadway. She was known as the Queen of the Cakewalk, and she was the choreographer for their shows and is the first Black woman credited with choreographing a Broadway musical, and may indeed have been the first first woman to ever do so. She didn't get credit for it. She did a number of shows that she didn't get billed for, but she definitely has was the first Black woman to get billed. And this, again, we're talking in 1911 or something like that. I can't remember the exact year she's in. So you wanted a couple more?
This is yeah. Give me some more, because this is fascinating.
In terms of gay artists, and of course we think about, it's not unusual to think about there would be gay men in the theater. But to go back to the very beginning, they're right there from the very beginning. They're creators. They're initiating these shows and have tremendous impact. And partly because they didn't have children, and there's no one sort of tell their story later on. Hassard Short is one of my favorite people in the book. And I had heard that name before. You see his name all over billing on Broadway, all over posters and things. But he was known as the genius of stagecraft and the master magician of Broadway. And over a 30-year career, he was a staging person. Sometimes he was billed as the director, sometimes he was staged by. It's hard. I can't quite get a sense of how much choreography he did, because he often worked with other choreographers as well. But he was the one putting the show onto the stage. And he had a 30-year career and 50 Broadway shows.
Wow.
And
Wow.
if you're talking about Fosse or you're talking about Michael Bennett, they're a legacy from Hassard Short. And the same, and his sort of, there's another guy named John Murray Anderson, whose name is a little more familiar to us. They have parallel careers. They're both happening at the same time. He was known as the king of revues, and he's another staging genius. He did 31 Broadway revues and musical comedies during this, and both of them continue into the 1950s.
That's
And
crazy.
they're just names that we are not centered the way I think they need to be and should be. And I was thrilled to be able to do at least part of that in this book.
Did you have a bunch that you had to just like leave on the editing room floor? I mean, how did you choose what to put in and what to leave out?
I don't think I left anybody out that is really significant, but there are people who are very well known who maybe don't get quite as much attention as they have in other books. Because you're right, there wasn't room for everything about everybody. One of the people who read the book early on did a sort of provided some early feedback on it and a great quotes for us, said there's just not enough about Frank Lesser in it. And that's probably true. Frank Lesser may have gotten a little bit of shrift because, of course, once the book was written, then Dom wanted me to trim it down a little bit so it wouldn't be 500 pages. So in that process, that's probably, there are probably some things, if I could write a 600-page book, I would add more, but it's mostly people who we already know their stories pretty well.
Is there going to be a part 2? Is there Broadway Bigger Nation?
Possibly. I actually have another, a different book in mind that will be sort of the sequel to it, not exactly a sequel. We'll leave that for another day, though.
I think, yeah. I mean, that's really, it's just really so cool. I mean, just looking through here, you've got all of these pictures. All of the chapters are nice song titles, right? Everything just kind of goes through in, like you're saying, in chronological order. And is there something in here that a lot of readers are going to find really surprising to hear about?
I think two things that surprised me in working on this. And the first thing was when I first started working on this was this early chapter, this early decade of Black musical theater on Broadway at the turn of the century. So right at the same time that George M. Cohan, who we often credit as the father of musical comedy, he's creating musicals side by side with Black artists like Bob Cole and the Johnson brothers, James P. and J. Rosamond Johnson, and Will Marion Cook, who are creating hit Broadway shows that tour all over the country. And in those days, even George M. Cohan shows, they didn't play very long on Broadway. You played like a couple months, and then the business was really a touring business. And a lot of times those shows would then come back to Broadway as their tour. These are just as famous and just as successful shows as the ones we know about during that period, but they've completely fallen off the radar. Huh. That's, to me, I think one of the most surprising things that section.
I was going to ask you about how much of this did you find, like, telling everyone stories, how much of it paralleled kind of world history? Because if this is immigrant, especially, Jews and queers and Black folks, like, so much is happening not only in our own country, but all over the world, causing everyone to like move around because of wars. There were literally 2 world wars that happened during the course of this timeline of this book, right? So did you find that parallel of the style of Broadway, what was coming, who was writing what, and like, was it affecting the business of show business?
Totally. And you can't separate the stories. The story of America is the story of the Broadway musical. Huh. And everything that's happening in our culture is affecting the Broadway musical and being reflected by it. what's weird in a way is that so much of it has to deal with immigration and migration, completely affects the invents the Broadway. The only reason the Broadway musical is invented is because of the immigration that's happening to New York at the time. And this, which creates an audience for show business, or the show business didn't exist before that. And then, so it creates this audience that wants to see it, but nice people won't be in it. You know, nobody respectable will be in show business because, and this has been true from the beginning of history, basically. People in show business, artists and singers and dancers and songwriters, are basically considered by the establishment as being one step away from vagabonds and prostitutes.
We're all charlatans, every one of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. And so loose morals. So no one will be in it, but people want to see it, which then creates an opportunity for marginalized groups who can't afford to have those kinds of prejudices. And so if you have the talent and you're Jewish or you're Black, there's this opportunity to be in business that you can seize because there's a vacuum there. And so it's really fascinating. And then that continues through variations of that continue through the eras. The second big segment of Black musical theater, which is in the 1920s, which kicks off with Shuffle Along, which is a show that we definitely know about. That's very famous. But there's then 20, I forget how many shows exactly, but a good dozen shows, Black musicals written by Black artists that open in the wake of Shuffle Along, many of which are hits, and many which we just don't talk about anymore. My Cassine Gaines, who wrote that terrific book When Broadway Was Black about Shuffle Along, I've always remembered what he said. He said that in 1925, there were more Black people on Broadway than there are today.
Wow.
Which seems counterintuitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but then it goes away, partly because of the Depression, partly because of racism. There's the story of the Black artist story comes in waves and then disappears continually, and which is, very, very sad, but also hopefully we'll pay attention to it this time and not let that happen again.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting and very cool that it's a dichotomy of we don't want to be part of it, but we want to watch it. Totally. That like people can't look away from a train wreck, right? Is that the kind of mentality? People just want to see
or a dance number.
People can't look away from a good dance number. That would stop traffic if there was a chorus of dancers on the side of I-95. But I guess when was the shift of it becoming more mainstream? Is there always sort of a separation of straight plays, non-musicals, and musicals, right? Like, or was it always just show business is show business? That's what's kind of charlatan-esque. We don't want to get involved.
I think it's mostly the latter. It's show business was show business, whether it was plays or musicals from the beginning. We have this expression, the legitimate theater. But what I just learned recently was that originally referred to between vaudeville and a story.
Interesting.
So everything that was a story, including musicals, was legitimate theater, and vaudeville was a separate thing. When vaudeville died, it seems like that separation then came between musicals and straight plays, started to inherit that legitimate theater were straight plays and illegitimate theater were musicals. But I don't think it started there.
Well, there's a lot of illegitimate straight plays I've seen too, but you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're about to get into trivia. Everybody, if you have any comments or questions for David directly, please put them in the chat, and we'll get to those here in a few minutes. But yeah, David, I guess just like final thought for my questions to you. There have been a lot of books that have been written about Broadway. So what makes this one really different and that people are going to grasp onto?
There are a lot of great books out there, and some that, and I'm, very grateful that they have been out there because they were inspirational to me in terms of that. But first of all, this is every time you write a book, there's since the last great book, which I think was Larry Stempel's book called Showtime, which was fantastic, there's now been 15, maybe almost 20 of Broadway history that's happened in the meantime. So that's the other challenge with this is every time you write one, you have more history to cover than the person who wrote the history before you, because it just keeps on rolling along. But to answer your question, what I do think makes it different is this lens that I try to position everything through and see the centering of these artists who even though they're entire books and documentaries about the Jewish creators of Broadway, and there's a lot of talk about the queer homosexual creators of Broadway. But for the first time, I think someone is melding those stories together and laying them on top of each other, layering it this way. And, of course, many people cross over in categories. So you can't really tell one story without telling the story of everybody else.
Right. I get that. And this is obvious to me that the way that you presented it, you can't separate them. You shouldn't separate them, because we wouldn't have Broadway as we know it now without everybody that you've mentioned in the book, everybody you've talked about, that everyone who's just not been talked about.
And what I've tried to do, and it's the hardest thing to document actually, but I've tried to get it into the book chance I can, is the influence these groups have on each other. Because they're existing side by side. And it's, again, something we don't think about. There are reviews, the Ziegfeld Follies, many of the editions of the Ziegfeld Follies had songs by Irving Berlin and by the Johnson brothers, Black artists, have songs in the same review at the same time. These are colleagues working side by side on Broadway at the same time. What was the interaction between them? What effect did they have on each other? They were, and they had tremendous respect for one another. And there are some stories that Irving Berlin went to see Shuffle Along dozens and dozens of times and would sit right in the first row, right behind U.B. Blake, who was conducting the show, and would talk to him during the show and say, "Oh, tell Noble Sissel that's a great lyric." And was a great the kind of world, and of course it makes sense because we know theater people. That's how theater people are.
Yeah.
But somehow that story is not usually told, that this is one, I won't say happy family, because I'm sure there were rivalries and all kinds of things going on, but there was tremendous interaction between all of these people.
That's crazy. Okay, so I could talk to you forever. We got to move on here. So we actually have a message from Dom, your editor. Yeah, you want to cue that up?
Oh yeah, that's it. Yes, Dom did a little video for us to talk about the book. I'm happy for you to see it.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Hi everyone, my name is Dom O'Hanlon and I am the editor of the book Broadway Nation by David Armstrong. I am absolutely delighted that this book is published today. All around the world, it is a vital resource for musical theatre fans and musical theatre students. I came to know David from his fantastic podcast, which I've been listening to as a musical theatre fan, historian, and academic for many years. And after so many of them, I just kept thinking, I would love to hear more from David. He's got an expansive knowledge, both practical as a practitioner in the field, but also just as a researcher and academic. It is really, really unparalleled. And hearing him interview so many of our method and drama authors on his podcast, I just reached out to him and wanted to see if he had interest in turning this fantastic podcast into a book, and I'm absolutely delighted he did. As you can no doubt see, it's a giant volume that has taken hours and hours and hours of David's time and research. It is brilliant. I've read it multiple times in multiple drafts. I just think it's thrilling to have an accessible textbook written for students of musical theatre that doesn't just retread the familiar story of how musicals were created. I just loved how it shines a spotlight on the different minority groups who created the Broadway musical, and just gives a more diverse and a wider, more interesting, integrated perspective on how musical theatre is created. I'm really, really passionate about the book and have absolutely loved working with David. So I urge you to buy it, enjoy it, give it to a friend, give it to a student. And here's to you, David. Congratulations. It's a massive achievement. I hope you're really, really proud.
Massive achievement. Really, really proud in the best accent I can't do.
Dom is British, in case anyone didn't figure that out. Matthew and Drama is a British company. They have an American, their imprint of Bloomsbury, which is a national company. So, but Dom was just terrific, and he's been so helpful.
Yeah. Well, it is now time for our first trivia set. So,
no, are we doing questions from the audience first?
Oh, we do questions first? All right, we'll do questions first. All right, so let's say blah, blah, blah. Okay, Heather Vickery, my buddy Heather, she wants to know, David, what's your favorite musical? Why?
My favorite musical?
Yeah.
I always say that's today, what is my favorite musical is the better question. And well, I will say this, it's impossible to answer, but there's probably 3 or 4 musicals that are always on my top list, no matter what year it is, that have been there for decades. So certainly Gypsy is one of those musicals that's on my top 10. Anything Goes is one of my favorite musicals that's on my top 10. Company is on my top 10. Sweeney Todd is on my top 10. And beyond that, things shift around a lot. But those 4 are definitely is part of the mix.
On my podcast, I always ask as one of my wrap-up questions, if you could only watch one musical for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you? And by far, the answer has been Sweeney Todd, over 400 plus episodes.
I agree with that, because I've had the pleasure of directing that show 3 times, maybe 4. And it's a show I could direct every year for the rest of my life, because you just can't ever tap into everything that show has to offer. It's endlessly fascinating and endlessly challenging.
All right. Question here from Heather, who runs the Broadway Fan Club. Hey, Heather, what's up? She wants to know, what do you feel is the biggest responsibility of the readers of this book? Hashtag start a movement. Don't you go like this? Hashtag start a movement.
The biggest responsibility from my point of view is get other people to buy it. But
Dom appreciate that.
But seriously, to enjoy it, because even though Dom and Matthew and Drama are intending this to be adopted as a textbook, I didn't write it like a textbook. And although it's very scholarly and incredibly well researched and documented, I particularly have an aversion to academic speak. And so I don't tend to write that way. It's very much in my style. If you know me from the podcast, you will have a sense of what the book is going to be like. So I guess my main direction for you is just enjoy it. I think it's a book you can read straight through and really, have a great time. But it's also a book you can delve into at various times, because I think there's some really fascinating things that you probably won't know about or know enough about on every page, basically.
Yeah. Just learn and spread these stories of the people whose stories need to be told. Yeah, I would think. Okay, one more question, and then we'll go to trivia, because I'm excited for the trivia. Gail, this is interesting. Gail Wright wants to know, Leander Wright, sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
Leander, yeah.
Leander Wright. Leander.
Hi, Gail.
Hey, Gail. Could you speculate as to why Gypsy is closing well before anticipated?
It is a little surprising, but Gypsy has never been a giant seller. It's the greatest show ever, and most people in the theater think it is at the top. It's probably, and I think Sondheim considered it to be this, and I think he's right. It is the high point of the golden age musical of the Rodgers and Hammerstein style of musical. And I think it's partly why Sondheim and other people wanted to move on after that, because there was nowhere else to go. That show and Fiddler on the Roof, there's several shows in that period that sort of just do it to its nth degree. And I think the generation that came out, well, what are we going to do? We can't, they've already done that. We need to do something else. And then they did. But Gypsy I've produced that show, and you at your own risk, you over anticipate ticket sales for that show.
Is it all of Whose Mama Rose? I mean, is that kind of where we are now in the churn that is Broadway?
No, I think it was that way from the beginning. Even when Merman was in the original production, was not the mega hit that, I mean, it was the same year as Sound of Music, and the difference in those two runs and the difference in the two reactions to that show were drastically different in terms of the audience's affinity for it. But I think it's just more of a specialized taste for a lot of people. And, she's not an easy character. I love when I make my students watch Gypsy, and they are blown away by Rose, because they're just surprised. Most of them are not musical theater people. This is a big lecture class that with students from all across the university. So they have never seen it before, and they don't expect a character that complex, that interesting to be on the stage. But I also think it's not the easy show that some people might want to expect when they go to a musical.
You're right. Easy is not what I would call Gypsy. Not at all. Not at all.
And of course, people like us go to be challenged a little bit, at least to a certain extent. And I wouldn't say that's a challenging show the way Sweeney Todd is a challenging show, but I do think the character of Rose leads to Sweeney Todd's character, these sort of anti-heroes who do things that horrify us, and we still are on their side.
But it's relatable, because there's so many of us that have parents or friends who have parents like that, and we know it's not out there in left field. So anyway,
or our parents like that,
yes, exactly. All right, so now we can do some trivia. Yeah,
great.
Okay. And I want to bring in another friend of us here. If she'll turn her camera on, I'll bring her in here any second now. Let's see, Michelle. There you are. Hey,
Hello.
Michelle Miller.
Hi.
So Michelle Miller is she's the host of Mentors on the Mic, and she also does she has a great podcast, all with some really good career advice and business advice. And I feel like Michelle, you probably have a lot you could take away from, with your conversations that David's been talking about from the book.
100%. Yeah. This has been so interesting.
Well, maybe you can help me figure out what to do next too, now that this book is done.
Well, I think there's gonna be more musicals. You could do a whole book all about what happened in COVID and how that reset the finish line.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Or the starting line. I don't know. Whatever, because everything's shut down. Okay, let's do some trivia. Trivia music. Da, 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 da. All right. I'm the first one. Okay.
You're up.
I'm up. So everybody.
Just one note. I've tried to make these trivia questions challenging, because I know we have a very sophisticated audience. They're not particularly easy, but I think with this group, I couldn't be too basic. So we'll see how it goes.
These are hard questions. And they're not simple one-word answers most of the time. All right, so we're going to pick the winners based on who got the closest to the answer that we have. And we'll show the answer after set. All right, so first...
Well, let's just talk about what they win.
Oh, yeah, what they win. So
everybody who gets a question correct, and you'll be the first person to put it into the chat. Did we tell people? We didn't tell people to go to BPN.
Yeah, so that was my next thing. So depending on what platform you're listening on, we're live right now on Instagram, Facebook, and multiple YouTube channels. So depending on where you're listening, there might be a delay compared to others, would give the others an unfair advantage. So
or you a disadvantage, yeah.
Yeah, or you put you at disadvantage. We say go over to the BPN YouTube page, which is, so everybody in the same spot, which will give everyone kind of an equal playing field. Quick short link is bpn.fm/live. Just put that in your browser or, browser. You can get there. And, okay.
Repeat that one more time for us, Alan.
bpn.fm/live. LIVE. That'll forward to the BPN YouTube page.
Right.
Okay. Question 1, which is, what is the old active Broadway theater? Or another way to say it, what is the oldest theater currently in use as a Broadway theater? Who knows the answer? Michelle, do you know the answer without looking?
No, I don't. But I'm curious. I feel like I read in Jeffrey Seller's book, put this detail in it. So I'm trying to remember it from that. But I don't know.
And there's actually, it's not a trick question, but there's actually 3 correct answers because there's 3 theaters still that are in operation today that were all built in the same year. It was 1903.
Is there multiple choice for this?
I see Broadway Fan Club is up with Lyceum. Is that the first one?
Yep, that's the first one.
So Broadway Fan Club, you get double kudos because the 3 correct answers are the Lyceum, the Hudson, and the New Amsterdam. But Lyceum is the only one that's been continually inactive from then until now. The other 2 were closed for a while and then have come back and are now Broadway theaters again.
The New Am. Yeah. Oh, we got a couple other correct answers in there. Kelly Sweeney says Lyceum.
Very good.
Good. Okay. Next
Fantastic.
question.
Oh, this is me.
Yeah, it's you.
So we talked about George M. Cohan, the Irish-American playwright, composer, director, producer, and song and dance superstar. His very first show, or his first hit show, was in 1904, and he went on to create 20 Broadway musicals and more than 500 songs. What was the name of that first hit show? And 2 still famous songs were featured in that score. Did he write for the score of that first hit show? So there's 3 you have to put in this answer: the name of the show and the name of the 2 still famous songs. Songs almost everybody on this podcast could sing if they had to.
I'm trying to not hum them. This is really
right?
hard.
They're so good. I feel like one of them, I felt like I knew it before I even knew it came from a Broadway musical, right?
So
Totally. They're like shows that seem like songs that have always been there. Yeah.
Yeah, this one's too hard for 30 Saints here. Abstain.
We appreciate you still trying to participate and contribute.
Close, Kelly.
Kelly's got the 2 songs.
Yep, 2 songs.
What
okay.
we don't have yet is actually, the real title is Yankee Doodle Boy, but we accept Yankee Doodle Dandy because nobody knows Yankee Doodle Boy is the actual title to
I
the
didn't
song.
know
So,
that.
yeah. So that's, Kelly, now what you don't have for us yet, Kelly, is the name of the show, which is probably the hardest part.
Can we give it to her because she's got 2 out of 3?
Yes, let's give it, since nobody else is chiming in. Let's get Kelly. Kelly's the winner.
That was a
Okay.
hard one.
Yeah. The missing title is Little Johnny Jones. There we go. Little Johnny Jones, Yankee Doodle Boy, or Yankee Doodle Dandy, and give my regards to Broadway.
Oh, 30 Saints knows all the answers. What?
Oh, that's what it is. Well, no, you should still participate
yeah,
then.
participate. Come on.
I know who that is. He would be
Oh,
cheating to participate on that particular answer.
Oh,
So
well,
see
then
how
we
he does later.
appreciate you.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
so funny.
4th
All right,
question.
Michelle, you're up.
Mine, okay. This is
Oh,
a fun
yeah,
one. What do the songs in the musical 6 have in common with the songs in the musical Chicago?
This is
So
an
there's-
open-ended question.
I
here.
know.
This is
Yeah, this will be a little challenging to put into for somebody to put in the chat, but I think you can figure it out. What is it about the songs in the musical 6 that is almost identical to the way the songs in the musical Chicago are used?
they're all about Henry VIII.
I didn't know Cantor
Right?
Edwards. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Who
okay.
knew that was a subtext
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Chicago?
yeah.
Well, there's death in both of them, right? Like the guy, Chicago murders, 6 deaths, beheadings.
Certainly, it's certainly somebody says female perspectives. Yes, that wasn't what I was going for, but that is that is correct. They are. It's though not all of the songs in Chicago are from the female perspectives.
True.
Kelly.
Kelly, there's cheating going on.
Now I just want the Henry VIII
That's all
women
right.
to come and sing Pop Six Squish, Cicero Lipschitz.
Oh
Like
my
that's now I
God.
feel like
That would be the TikTok crossover.
that would be so funny.
To make Broadway talk.
Broadway should do that. I
Multiple
feel like Broadway
stories.
should do these like cross Broadway TikToks.
I like it.
Like that, right?
Let's see. We've got okay. I don't know what you want to choose, David. There's a couple good ones. Female perspectives. Heather from the Broadway fan club said, let's see. Presentational Brechtian, says Gail. Denise D says multiple stories. Which one do you want to go with? Because
I could also give a clue. Do you want to give a little bit of a clue for people?
Yes. What fascinates me about this is, and I compare these shows in the book, is that the concept that the authors are using to write these shows is almost identical. They're just using different eras of music in the way that they do it.
Good clue.
both show you pop music, says Daniel O'Connor.
Getting closer.
Good, Daniel. Very close. Elaborate, Daniel.
Tell us more.
Elaborate, Daniel O'Connor.
Let's see. Top 3. I'm looking over on Instagram. Top 3 musical songs. I mean, that's not part of the answer.
I think go into what David was saying about the conceptual part. I think that's what I would underline, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vaudeville?
Vaudeville is the Chicago part, yes, and
Yeah.
So let me just let's give half the answer since that's great. Ben, is that Chicago wrote all the song. The Kander Nebb created the show, and each song is modeled after specific artists from the 1920s. Sophie Tucker and Bert Williams and Helen Morgan and Eddie Cantor. The songs are created to mimic the songs that those creators sang. How does that parallel itself in Six?
Oh, sorry. I thought
you were explaining the answer.
Yeah, I just put the answer up.
You did? Oh, good. Okay. So we're going to give it.
It's interesting.
That's tough.
I really did. I mean, obviously, I knew that to be true about Six, right? That's a defining part of the show. But I didn't know that about Chicago, which is the same sort of concept that the signature songs were for different artists. That's so cool.
Totally. I mean, When You're Good to Mama is a Sophie Tucker song, who's was the last of the Red Hot Mamas and had several songs about.
Can we say this about Hamilton then too? Because didn't Lin-Manuel do the same thing, where like Jefferson and Lafayette, everyone had a different artist influence?
That's very interesting. I didn't draw it that far, but that there is an element of that's absolutely true. Yeah. So just so everybody understands, the songs in Six are modeled after specific contemporary pop divas like Beyonce and Ariana Grande and Britney Spears. And each of those characters wears costumes that reflect those artists and sings songs that reflect those artists. Yeah.
Osuf's 2 says, tell me a winner, or do you want to do multiple winners for this one? Tell me who to add into the list of possible book winners here.
I think definitely add Daniel and Ben.
Daniel O'Connor. I'm taking notes here. And then Ben. What was Ben's last? Ben Francis. All right. Daniel O'Connor, Ben Francis. You two get the W on this one. All right. So question 4.
Wow.
Yeah, we got one more. So this is a more straightforward one. That one was hard, complicated. What Broadway musical is the highest grossing entertainment property of all time? And that's I phrased it that way on purpose. Not just the highest grossing Broadway musical, the highest grossing entertainment property of all time that has grossed more than Avatar and more than all the Star Wars films combined.
Good distinction on that.
We're talking.
I didn't catch that right away.
Full TV, movies, everything.
Free entertainment.
Everything. It's at the top of the heap of all entertainment in the history of the world.
Wow.
Come on, you've got to have some guesses, people. I mean, You like
Phantom of the
Phantom of the
Opera.
Opera?
Okay.
No. There we go.
We've got it. Broadway Fan Club.
Great. Yes. Phantom of the Opera has grossed nearly $10 billion in
my
sales.
God.
Phantom's number
And
2.
again, this has nothing, not counting the movies I'm sorry, wait, no, did I say Phantom? That Phantom of the Opera is not correct. Sorry. Phantom of the Opera is number 2.
Yeah, Phantom's 2.
Phantom of the Opera is number 2. Lion King is number 1. Did anybody say Lion King?
Yes, Broadway Fan Club said Lion King.
Okay, I didn't hear that part. Great. So just again, I'll say it again. The stage version of Lion King has grossed nearly $10 billion in sales. And number 2 is Phantom of the Opera, which I think is around $6 billion in sales.
Crazy.
With both of those has nothing to do with any of the film versions, just the stage versions of those shows internationally, obviously.
So wait, are we including you're saying we're not including the movies? We're not including any of the additional. How about merch? None of it, just the stage show.
Probably the merch they sell when you go to the show. Yes.
Right.
Probably.
Okay. So just anything that has to do with being.
I think it's the gross ticket sales. No, I think the number is based on gross ticket sales.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty gross. That's a lot of ticket sales. Okay. Dad jokes. Okay, so speaking of Phantom, with nearly 14,000 performances, of the opera is the longest running musical of all time. So, since 1920, only 10 other shows have held that title. Name 5 of the others.
So there's 10 possibilities. 10 shows have been the longest running show in Broadway history, and then replaced by the one that ran longer and replaced by the next one that ran longer. It's only 10 shows, which is kind of amazing. Oh. And the last one is Phantom of the Opera.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of these, I'm looking at the answers. Let's see.
I only knew a couple of them, to be honest. This was interesting.
We've got 3 in the chat already. Yep. So
Gail has 2 of them, I see, which is
Gail
great.
Gail has 2. Ben has 1.
Ben has 1.
Yep. Let's see.
Kelly's got 1 also, yeah.
Let's see.
Oh, Cats, yep. Kelly, yeah. Kurt has 1. Did you guys see Kurt?
Yep. Cat's Fiddler.
Hello, Dolly is 1. Yep, we've got another one from Ben Francis.
Yeah, it's Chicago is not 1.
Yeah, could you guys, are you getting all this, Alan, in terms of...
I'm waiting for somebody to put 5 of these into a single message.
Oh, that's what we need, guys. We need 5 in 1. Hold on, we've got...
I think Heather from Fan Club just did it. Let's see. Chicago.
Well, Lion King is not on the list.
Oh, no. Lion King and Chicago is not on the list.
Right.
Yeah, neither. They're long runs, but they haven't broken the record yet.
But you've done others, just in case you want to amend the list.
Well, I think we should get, since Gail started this off, let's make sure Gail in there.
Yeah.
And
we'll add Gail to our list of winners.
And I think we've got everybody else in there already as winners.
Right. Are you doing repeats though, Alan? Are you going to be including an extra?
We will
one?
do repeats.
Okay.
Well, no, Wicked is not in there. I'm going to read them now to you. So we'll cut this off.
Great job, guys.
Starting, really good. It's a hard question.
This is hard.
Yeah.
Starts with Irene, which opens in 1919. Then it goes Hell's a Poppin', Oklahoma, My Fair Lady, Hello Dolly, Fiddler on the Roof, Grease, A Chorus Line, Cats, and The Phantom of the Opera.
Wait, to Heather's point, Chicago's considered the longest running over Phantom over last year from what they announced. Maybe it's just from actively running?
It's the one still running, yes.
I think currently still running as opposed to a vault kind of thing.
But hasn't run longer than Phantom of the Opera did, even though it's not running anymore. Same thing with Wicked. Those are probably the 2 shows that have a possibility of passing Phantom.
I mean, look at those numbers, though.
They've got a long way to go.
13,981 performances.
God.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to beat.
That's a long time to not upgrade your tech and not make your seats better. God. Anyway. Nothing could beat my Phantom.
Well, isn't there rumors that Phantom's coming back? Is that true?
Yeah,
Well, they're
there's
doing this
rumors.
Off-Broadway
Right?
thing that's sold out,
Hard
apparently.
to beat
Yeah.
Phantom if it comes back. It doesn't count as longest running, maybe, if
Well,
it's
it's
stopped
gonna
and then
No.
come
be
back.
it's gonna be different. They're
It's
gonna have
gonna
like
be different.
lasers and fireballs and like laser cats. Like Phantom with laser cats is definitely it. I have that from a reputable
God.
source.
Oof.
Like actually, The Lonely Island and SNL are co-producing. Totally true. Totally true.
Really?
No, not at
No.
all.
God,
No,
I don't know
no.
why I'm so gullible.
Can you imagine?
I was like, do they have a penchant for Phantom that I didn't know about? That's crazy.
Actually, then
Okay.
they take it to space and they do space opera.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. This is everything. Okay, so real quick, if you have any questions for David, throw them in the chat again. We'll take a
Yeah,
quick
let's go back to questions.
We'll
Yeah.
do a quick.
There were a few more that we didn't get to, so we can go back into those.
Oh, sure. Let me scroll. One yourself, Michelle, while I'm
What-
looking.
Well, I see one from Ben Francis thinking about the immigrant experience. What do you think of the end of Fiddler on the Roof? Is the move to America seen positively?
Yes, I do think it's as positive as it can be in that story because we know where the story is going. We even the audience who saw it originally knew that if you don't escape to America, you're going to end up with then Cabaret continuing the story. So I do think it is a positive thing, although their world has been completely, ripped asunder. It certainly, it has one of the greatest moments, I think, in theater history, which is when Tevye turns and tells the fiddler to come along. He's going to take
Yeah.
tradition with him to the new world. Tradition's going to
Yeah.
go along and, evolve, change, and be different, but still be there. So yes, I think it is a bittersweet positive ending
I was
to that
just
show.
thinking that. It's bittersweet because one of the last songs is Anatevka, right? Where it's like this bittersweet minor chord sort of thing of, saying goodbye to the place we love, but also, like you said, looking forward to where we're going.
That's Darth Vader's big 11 o'clock number. Yeah.
And the thing's interesting about that song is it's filled with humor and
Yeah.
jokes still
Yeah.
because that's just so much a part of the the Yiddish milieu that the show comes from. Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a good song.
Heather, Broadway Fan Club, she wants to know what kind of show would you like to see come to Broadway next? And do you prefer known IP or original concept shows?
The fact is that in the history of Broadway, almost every show the hit has been based on an existing story. I hate the word IP because I think it's a movie term and it really doesn't apply to Broadway, even when shows are based on movies. Stephen Sondheim based 3 of his shows on movies. So it's not the fact that the show's based on an existing story. From back to the princess musicals back at the, in the teens, they established this pattern that you're going to base it on a story that already works. And I always say it's because writing a musical is really, really hard. The only thing more difficult is writing an original story that works. And you put those two things together in one, and you have an almost impossible task. In recent years, we've had a few more shows than usual do that. Dear Evan Hansen, and there's a number of them. But most things are based on something, and I think that's great. It's just there's nothing wrong with that as long as you. So I think, to answer your question, I think using an existing story is what I would recommend. Just choose your story. It doesn't have to be a pop movie. It doesn't have to be. If it's going to end up being Back to the Future, I don't want to see that. But if it's going to end up being Hamilton, I do want to see it.
Well, I have a follow-up question to that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So my question is, if there was some creator out there that you'd want to create a musical, would it be? Like, who would it be? And then also, what would it be about? And that could be a separate question by a different person. But is there some sort of person that you'd want, like a story you'd want to highlight? So first would be who would create it? And then what would your musical be about, or ideal musical be about?
I'm not sure I have a ready answer for
That's
that one.
fair. That's fair.
Ben Folds.
Ben Folds
Folds,
create a musical.
I've always thought he is somebody. He's talked about it. It has been in the. There's been, some even he, I think, talked about it at some point. It's just harder. All those pop songwriters get into it and they find out, oh, this is really hard. And I
Yeah.
have to do a bunch of things that I don't yet know how to do. And then the great ones figure it out and do it. But it defeats a lot of people who are not used to that.
I really like this answer. Broadway Podcast Network
Good.
musical.
Oh, wait. Well, okay.
It's just gonna be it's just gonna be me like saying, "Fix your audio."
I would love Daniel. I would Taylor Swift to make a musical all about. Yes. The answer is yes for me. I'm a huge Swiftie. But I did have a question about that too. Before that, which is what pop singer has created a musical that is your favorite? Because we've had some really great pop
Good
singers.
question.
Thank you. They're just coming.
Not talking about a jukebox musical in this case.
Not
We're
talking about Duke. That's a great question.
A new
Distinction.
musical.
Yeah, a new musical created by some sort of pop singer.
Would you classify Hadestown in that? Because Anais Mitchell she wrote like non-musical songs first.
Yes, absolutely. And she's
Okay.
somebody who has, and same thing with Waitress. So those are two pop
Waitress.
songwriters who have succeeded.
Hell's Kitchen.
Which is partly a jukebox musical.
Partly,
but
you're
also
right.
has new
But
songs. Yeah,
I feel like it's a jukebox musical of someone's creative work. So I feel like that's a bit of a distinction. It's not like I just saw Moulin Rouge, right? So it's not like it's it's not that kind of jukebox musical. I feel like it's maybe a little different if it's like the one.
And the artist herself is creating it. So that does make a distinction. Yeah.
Exactly. But do you have a favorite?
None of those are my favorite shows, I have to say.
That's fair.
I respect them, and I think they do. It's interesting. It's one of the things I disagree with most of my students about is I just didn't get Hadestown. It just left me completely cold, and I've seen it twice now, and that's horse races. That's how things go. Everybody likes different things. So yeah.
And if you want to throw eggs at David Armstrong's house, he lived no.
That's
as long as
it's virtual. I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
That's a hot take, David. You're gonna offend some listeners with that one, but I'm here for it.
I think it's good to have strong opinions about it.
Yeah.
It's good to have strong opinions about
I
it.
love the first tweets of it, and then I checked out.
Well, okay, so there's a great question from Gail in here that I'm going to put a pin in. I've started. Gail, I promise you we're going to come back to it, but I want to make sure we get some more trivia winners into our wheel of random winner that we're going to pick later. So I think we should move on to a 5 trivia quiz.
Let's repeat what the prize will be, just in case anyone's just
Go ahead,
tuning
David.
in.
The prize is the hardback $100 edition of the book signed by me. So autographed copy for whatever that's worth. So that's the prize. That's what you'll all be in the pool for. We actually have a wheel of fortune that you're going to get into at the end.
And the book is priced, the hardcover is priced at $100. This is a very, very nice prize.
You can also go over to bloomsbury.com right now for 30% off paperback or hardback. And then you can win trivia, get a signed copy to save for yourself and give your 30% off to a friend. Do what you gotta do.
Or you could give something
The
as a
signed
gift.
copy. That's right.
Gift. This is a gorgeous, great gift for people. Your friends who love musical theater. This is it. This is
it. All right, David.
Right. I just want to acknowledge that a couple of people put Kinky Boots in that last when we were talking about that last question, and there I would second that. Kinky Boots, I think, may be the answer to your question. I think,
Good to know.
did a really terrific job
Daniel.
of yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. What's our next question, David?
Oh, it's me.
Yes.
All right. So it's well known, and this is the one we alluded to earlier. It's well known that Oscar Hammerstein II directly mentored Stephen Sondheim, and Sondheim mentored several Broadway songwriters, including Jason Robert Brown, Jonathan Larson, and Lin-Manuel Miranda. But who was Hammerstein's mentor and early collaborator? Who taught Hammerstein how to make musicals?
Who's taught the godfather of musicals how to make musicals?
To a great extent. Not Jerome Kern.
We have a winner. I see a winner in the chat.
Oh, yes. Yes. Are you seeing Gail or are you seeing somebody else?
I'm seeing Gail.
Yeah. Not almost Gail.
Almost.
Almost.
Kurt,
but
there we go.
Kurt,
got it.
Kurt
got
Powers
it.
has the whole name.
Otto Harbach.
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 Gail
exactly.
said, what did Gail say? Gail said
Now she
Hamburg.
got- Yeah, exactly.
Close.
I've done that same thing myself sometimes. So
Close.
yeah, typo. Yeah. All right, well,
Harb-
let's give it to both of them, to
Okay.
Gail and Kurt.
Power. All right. So
Yeah,
if you
Otto
want-
Harbach, and that is the chapter. That's the centerpiece of the book. Is this legacy chain from Otto Harbach to Lin-Manuel Miranda? It's 4 degrees of separation between
All right.
them.
Next question is me. At what musical did young Stephen Sondheim break down in tears while attending its opening night performance?
He told this story himself several times.
Oh, we got it. Got it already. Ben Francis
And
nailed it.
Francis. Well
And
done,
there's
sir.
no mistake there, because Ben wrote a fantastic book about carousel. So he
Oh.
should be getting this.
What's the book?
It's called Round and Circles. It's
Amazing.
a fantastic history of the musical carousel.
All right,
Yeah.
Michelle, you're up next.
Oh, I'm loving this. Okay, who was the first woman to write the full score, both words and music, right, for a Broadway show? And we
Yeah, both
have
words and music.
we have
And
a
you can read
multiple
off these
choice.
examples. Read off
Yeah.
it's a multiple choice question.
Anne Caldwell for The Night Boat, 1920. Dorothy Donnelly, Poppy, 1924. Kay Swift, Fine and Dandy, I shouldn't say the date. Yeah, the date.
Yeah, you can say the date. That's fine, yeah.
1930, and Anne Ronell, Count Me In, 1942.
So again, Anne Caldwell, Dorothy Donnelly, Kay Swift, or Anne Ronell, who was the first woman to...
I took a second.
I'm
because I was
sorry,
like,
I
wait,
did-
am I giving the dates? I shouldn't give the years. And then I realized.
I credited Ben with the wrong book. We'll correct that in a minute. Sorry about that.
Anne Caldwell, Dorothy
Another great book.
Donnelly,
It's
Kay
not-
Swift,
not
Anne
Kay
Ronell.
Swift.
So Broadway Club, Kay Swift is a great answer because she is the first woman to compose the full score of a Broadway musical. The first, but she didn't write the lyrics. Anne Caldwell and Dorothy Donnelly wrote both the book and the lyrics, but not the music. What we're looking for is, which we may have just answered our question there, because
Nobody
we
got
did
this
process
one.
of elimination. Anne Ronell was
Nobody
is the
got
correct
this one.
but you get a chance. What are Anne Ronell's most famous songs? And they're not from a Broadway musical.
Which is the next official question, by the way.
Yeah, Anne Ronell is the correct answer. But what would be her most famous song? And there's actually two. Well, there's 2 possibilities.
2 possibilities.
Anne
Anybody?
Ronell's most famous song.
Did you know these, Michelle?
That's very
Did not
close,
know these.
Gail. That's a good guess, but not quite the right one. But you're in the right territory. And Gail said, "Cry Me a River."
I did not know this one. This one's
Uh-uh.
harder for me. Yeah, I know. Daniel's also the question mark, question mark, question mark.
All right, that's okay. I like stumping people. I don't
Ooh.
want to make
Oh,
Kelly-
we've got.
Oh,
Broadway Fan
geez.
Club is exactly
Heather.
right. Now
Heather
maybe
pulling it out.
Yeah.
Well, we also got one.
and
so,
Gail
I mean,
got it. Yeah, I think Gail was headed there with her other answer. "Willow Weep for Me" is a great jazz standard, fantastic song. And then, bizarrely, their other big hit is "Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf." So you wouldn't think 2 people the same person wrote both those songs. Kelly has it too. She says there.
Kelly got it first, I think, because it's an or question, right? You don't have to
"Willow
put
Weep
both
for
in
Me."
one
Yeah,
answer.
Kelly did get that. Yeah.
So I think Kelly gets that.
All right, we're gonna give a bunch of credit here, I think.
Okay. Yeah, Kelly, Broadway Fan Club. We got Gail also at this, similar timing.
Yep. All
Yeah.
right. Winners on this one.
Yeah.
And we
Is
have
it-
one more question, David.
One more question.
All right. So let me find it here. Sorry. Oh, this is a fun one, I think. So during the decade following the opening of 1921's Broadway smash hit "Shuffle Along," and 24 musicals written by and starring Black theater artists opened on Broadway in its wake. One of those was the 1923 hit Runnin' Wild, which introduced a song and dance craze that still define the spirit of the 1920s and the Jazz Age. What is the name of that song and the dance? The song and dance that define the spirit of the 1920s and the Jazz Age. And
It's the Macarena.
Yeah. It is the Macarena. It's an early, not many people know it came from the 1920s. So this is the song anytime you see a documentary about the 1920s, any movie about the 20s,
we've got a couple people answering.
All right. Kurt
Good.
got it. I see Kurt first. Is it? You guys concur?
I see Kurt first.
All right.
Yes.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, Kurt and Ben and Broadway Fan Club all got the correct answer, which is the Charleston. The Charleston was, and another little tidbit there is it was choreographed by a woman named Elida Webb, who had been one of the trend-setting chorus girls in Shuffle Along. The chorus girls in Shuffle Along were a sensation because they danced in a way that nobody had danced on Broadway before. And then she went on to choreograph and also Running Wild, and with that she became the second Black woman credited with choreographing a Broadway musical. There were probably Black women who had choreographed other shows and other numbers in shows, but they didn't get any billing. So she's the second one to get billing for that.
That's cool. All right. So we've got
Thanks, Gail. Gail said this is really fun. We appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go for about another 8 minutes here. And I want to get back to some audience questions that I promised I'd get back to. So David, Gail here wants to know, can you speak to the role of nonprofit regional theaters and the current threats to their sustainability?
Oh, what a sad topic, but I will. It's an important one. Theaters across the country are really, really, really in trouble. The audience, and has struggled also, and Broadway, has had some wins, but is also not back to where it was. The situation is much worse for regional theaters. The pandemic broke the habit of people going to the theater. And now, and I'll talk about, especially here in Seattle with the Fifth Avenue Theater and other theater companies that I know about, we have a problem that every city's having, but multiplied here. People have not come back to work still. People are working remotely. And so about half the people, maybe it's a little better than that now, there's been some improvement, but about half the people who used to work downtown in Seattle work downtown today. The rest of them are wherever they are. So now a theater company has to convince people to get out of their pajamas and come to the theater, as opposed to, why don't you just stay after work and come to the show? So it's a giant problem. And even people who are working, the habit has been broken. So I'm not exactly sure what the solution is. And then, of course, we have funding issues besides the audience at the same time. So it's really a challenge. The number one thing anybody could do to improve the situation is subscribe to a theater company. Buy a subscription. It's a huge difference for So I don't know if I answered that fully, Gail, but if you have any money that you can throw at that, and what will you get in return? You'll get to see some great shows. You'll get to go to the theater. You'll get out of your house and go to something. So that's the only solution. Plus, in terms of politically lobbying for other directions as well.
Thank you. All right. Kelly Sweeney says, I miss the reviews of the 70s and 80s, like Sophisticated Ladies, Blue in the etc. What would you produce if you could do anything with any budget?
Yeah, I'm right with you, Kelly. I miss the reviews have fallen off the face of the earth. And when I was in college and when I moved to New York, reviews were front and center, and now people hardly even know what a review is. You describe it to them, they think it's a theme park review. They don't know the quality that a review can actually have and the impact it can have. I mean, Ain't Misbehavin' was one of the greatest shows, bar none, I've ever seen in my life. That cast in that show, and multiple casts in that show, was one of the greatest theatrical experiences I've ever seen. But people don't understand because we just haven't been exposed to that. So I do think I really wish somebody would figure out how to bring back, how to reinvent the review, and especially the reviews. The book reviews are right up there with subject matter in this book, especially the reviews of the 1930s, especially, which is sort of the heyday of the review. Sophisticated, political, amazing reviews that were done, topical reviews that again began fading in the 1950s when television sort of took it over, and then came back again in the 70s to a great extent. And the review is also very important in most of those 70s musicals because Hair is a review. Company is basically a review format. All the artists started using the review format from the past to make shows that we don't necessarily think of as reviews, but are utilizing the format of it. A Chorus Line is sort of a review. Cats is a review. So it's something I'm very passionate about.
Cats is also an acid trip, but that's the category.
Yeah, I love my little section on cats in the book. I encourage people to check that out. It's actually it just sort of identifies what Cats is in relation to other shows and how it relates to some other quite famous shows.
The beginning of that section just says WTF in big bold letters with cat eyes. All right, not really. So I think this is a good...
that one's a great one. I wanted you to do that.
Yeah, this question from Heather, again, Broadway Fan Club. What is your opinion on theater influencers compared to media outlet reviews?
Alan and I have thoughts, so I'm curious what yours are because I know his.
I could get in trouble with this one. I think fans of the theater are great. So I'm very happy for anyone to have great enthusiasm for Broadway. The challenge with some influencers is, and it's finding the balance, and maybe I've been guilty of this at times too, is it's not about you, it's about the show. So and that, of course, the audience is responding a lot to the influencer and is connected to that person. So I think I just would encourage, figure out a way to keep that relationship that you would have with your audience, but try to make sure that the focus stays on the shows, on Broadway, on the material.
And I think
go ahead.
Stay informed, right, David? Like, I feel like, I mean, listen, influencers are I get that's how people hear about stuff right now. So I think they're great. I think I get it. But stay informed. Like, your opinion can't just be, I hated it. Understand that there's a show, there's a lot of people involved. I don't want to hear I hated it. I want to hear, don't you like about it, what you do like about it. And be specific about it so that I can go in making an informed decision whether I should see the show as well instead of trashing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah, critical assessment of it is exactly what we want to. We want to tune in for something like that. We want to hear that. But yeah, it's, in a way, influencers to a great extent have replaced journalists to a great extent, but without the credentials behind them. So I encourage people to say, now you're the journalist, so back that up with informed opinions.
And what I might like in a show might not be what you like in a show. And so if they hear, for example, my review, they might be like, oh, wait, Michelle doesn't like this for part of the show, but I love that stuff. And then it's still a great review and it still excites someone. So I encourage people to be nicer and also be more specific and
specificity. I was going to say is because I can say, this show was terrible, but why? What was it? The performances? Was it the staging? Was it the lights? Was it the book? Like, the songs were great. Just be specific and explain yourself, because there's some people who are going to come in and just have completely different opinions. Where if you just go out straight up and just say like that stunk, then not giving a show its chance. Anyway.
Yeah, and it's so hard to get on Broadway. It's so hard to get to that place. It's like, just, if anything, I would tell people, and I think media outlets most of the time or have done this in the past, but just have some respect for the production. Have some respect for the fact that there's a lot of people's livelihoods are at stake. You might not like something, but that's what I would, so not that this really is about your opinion, David, but I have strong feelings about people being unnecessarily mean and critical.
I'm totally there with you. And
Yep.
it's something I try not to ever critique something without some reasoning behind what that critique is.
Yep.
And there's shows I can say I didn't like it, but that doesn't mean I try to then say it wasn't for me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the show necessarily. It just it didn't resonate with me.
Yeah, there have been some songs, even or shows, even this current season, past season, that I was just like, no, I don't ever need to see that again. People are like, this changed my life for the better. And I'm like, I don't get it, but good for you.
And I remember, Alan, you had a because we see a lot of Broadway shows together, Alan and I. You loved Boop, right? I remember you walked out going, Boop was amazing. And I remember being like, Boop is nice. Like, I liked it, but you loved it. And like, there's room for that.
Yeah. All right. So, oh man, we've been talking for an hour and a half. This is great. Thank you all for sticking with us this long. I'm going to queue up our little wheel of winners to pick an ultimate winner. But in the meantime, while I do that, let's switch over to David, who's going to read us a little bit from the book.
And I promise this is very short, everybody. I don't know, you probably don't want to sit here and listen to me read a giant section of the book. So I tried to find something that I thought would work out of context. Sorry, I just need to put my glasses on or no one will hear anything. All right. And of course, with my headset on, that's even more challenging. So this is coming from the opening paragraph of chapter 11, which has a long title. It's called Let the Sunshine In, The Modern Era of Broadway, Part 1. And then there's a subtitle to that, The Multiple Revolutions of the 1970s. And the focus of this chapter is how there were multiple ways that the musical was reinvented and revolutionized in the 1970s, all sort of happening simultaneously. And this section I call Time Destination Number 2, April 1968. Another of my top time travel fantasy destinations would be the week of April 22nd, 1968, because it would provide an exceptional opportunity to witness a key turning point in Broadway history. I'd start that week if I could go back in time, I'd start that week by seeing two great Jerry Herman musicals back to back. Mame, choreographed by Anna White, and now starring Janice Page on Monday night, and Hello Dolly, directed and choreographed by Gower Champion, and starring Pearl Bailey and Cab Calloway on Tuesday night. On Wednesday, I'd catch most of the original cast of Cabaret, directed by Harold Prince and choreographed by Ron Field, at the matinee. And then that night, I'd see Cabaret's already departed Tony Award-winning star Joel Grey play the father of the musical comedy in the bio-musical George M., directed and choreographed by Joe Layton. On Friday, I'd attend Jones and Schmidt's big Broadway hit, I Do, also staged by Champion, and now starring Gordon McRae and Carol Lawrence. Then on Saturday, I'd start with the matinee of Man of La Mancha and catch the Fiddler on the Roof at the evening performance. Broadway shows didn't play on Sundays in those days, but off-Broadway shows did. So that day I would venture down to the Village and see the matinee of Jones and Schmidt's original off-Broadway hit, The Fantastics, now in its 8th year. Then to top the week off, I lost my place. To top the week, I would stick around 1968 for one more day to attend the opening night performance of the American tribal love rock musical Hair. In just 8 days, I would experience 8 of the prime examples of the crowning achievements of the golden age of Broadway musical play and musical comedy at its peak, and then witness the shocking and abrupt jump cut to what I call the modern era of Broadway. It is a place I think that would be mind-blowing to be able to experience that, all of those shows in that one week period.
That would be a good week. You're muted. You're muted, Michelle.
That was such a good thing I wanted to say. Luckily I can say it now. David, that was so great. Are you reading a portion of the book kind of like that, like an excerpt on your podcast as an episode?
I have not yet, but I'm sure I will be doing some of that at some point. Yeah,
Then
absolutely.
I think it's an easy thing for people to send. Be like, hey, here's a cool excerpt. I think you'd like it. Listen to it and see what you think.
Absolutely. And we are discussions about an audiobook, so I'm very excited about that.
Very cool.
Well, let's pick our winner here. I've got all the names of everybody who won in the order that they won, and let's see. I gotta pull
Looks
this
good
up.
to me on my list, by the way. You told me to make my own. This looks exactly like what I have.
Good. So here we go. I don't know who the winner's gonna be. This is random. It is going to be Gail.
Wow. Terrific. So, Gail, please send me a message in Instagram or on Facebook just to make sure I get the book to you and get your address so we can send it off to you. Again, if anybody else is interested in purchasing this book, let's put it up one more time today. And I don't know how long they're going to keep this up. I was surprised that happened today. I think it's because it's the debut day of the book. 30% off of either the paperback or the hardback at bloomsbury.com today. So don't go to Amazon, go to Bloomsbury to get the discounts.
Congratulations, Gail.
Congratulations.
Yes, absolutely.
And with that, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
I think you guys should do like a podcast guest swap. You be guests on each other's podcast. Just saying.
I'm there. All right, we'll do it.
All right, yeah. So check out Mentors on the Mic, Michelle's podcast. Michelle, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much.
All right, and then David, thank you so much for joining me this evening. And Gail, congratulations for winning. David, any final closing thoughts before we wrap up?
This has been really fun and so, and I love the participation of it. So it's just so fun to interact with people. And, I hope I'll be able to do that in person at various events, but this one is probably just such a great opportunity to be able to do that. So thank you all. And thank you. I mean, the audience for Broadway Nation podcast has been instrumental in the creation of this book. The two things can't be separated. So thank you to everybody who's supported the podcast over the years, and it really is. I think, and I thank you in the acknowledgments in the book. I definitely thank the podcast audience and Broadway Podcast Network, who've just been, again, none of this would have happened without the Broadway Podcast Network, and yeah. So thank you, Alan. Thank everybody on your team.
Thank you. It's great. Everybody, please, you can get more of the Broadway Nation podcast at BroadwayPodcastNetwork.com, of course. What we need to add, because today's launch day, we need to add the link to the book on the page. So let's do that. So we'll add the link to the book, throw that in there. David, this has been so great. Everybody who was listening and who was participating, thank you so much for making this a wonderful live stream. And then, David, let's do this again.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thanks so much.
Right. Bye, everyone.